Hello viewers and welcome to another Linux video. Today we're trying something a little different, and instead of showing you a dull and boring PowerPoint, I'm here to give you a more hands-on practical experience of Linux. Now if you watched my previous Linux video, then I'm sure you're already familiar with what Linux is and the various distributions that are based off the kernel. Today we're looking at a specific distribution, and that is Fedora. Now Fedora is one of the most common Linux distros, and it's primarily used in the workplace. This is because it's very stable, free, and creates an innovative open source platform for clouds and hardware, which allows software developers to build tailored solutions for their users. It also comes pre-installed with a bunch of free Office 365 equivalent administration programs, which is called LibreOffice. There's also another distro based off Fedora called Red Hat, but specific versions of the enterprise software is actually proprietary. So Fedora is basic industry level software which I want to be showing you. This version is one of the latest, if not the latest version of Fedora. This is Fedora 34, which makes a pretty big change by bundling Gnome 40, which is the display manager, which allows Fedora 34 to adopt a vertical layout as opposed to a horizontal one. In fact, I think it was the first mainstream distribution to include Gnome 40. So if you want to walk alongside me through Linux, you can do so by installing virtualization software such as VMware or VirtualBox. I'm currently using VirtualBox at the moment, as you can see at the bottom here, and I will set up a dedicated tutorial on how to set it up in the near future, but please bear in mind that there are other videos online that instruct you how to do this. So enough with the talking, let's actually get into Fedora. Now, one of the very first things that you will see when you load up a Linux distro, maybe through a virtualization software, or maybe you're running it off an optical drive, an external optical drive, or even a memory stick, then you will see this little prompt here. So it will give you the option to try Fedora or to actually install it, because it doesn't believe that you've actually installed it to your drive. But with virtualization software, I've just kind of allocated the minimal hardware required to run. So you can try Fedora, but just bear in mind that it would just be a little bit slower than if you actually install it. You can actually configure a dual boot setup, which means you can allocate some of your hard drive storage to accommodate Linux. So then when you go into the boot menu, whenever you turn on your computer, you can choose or cycle between operating systems for which one you want to load up. So you can both have Windows and Linux living together, which is pretty cool. So we're just going to try Fedora for the moment, and the first thing that you'll probably see is if I press the Win key or on my keyboard and click Show Applications, you can see that more workspaces exist. So this is I don't believe it's a new feature, but this is what Gnome 40 has to offer. So you can pretty much separate applications and desktop icons onto two different workspaces, which is pretty cool. So you can have a sort of administrator workspace here, and then you can have a more personal workspace here as well. So let me show you. Now, just to demonstrate how to separate applications, if I just launch photos here on the system tray, then it will come up. Obviously I don't have any photos because I literally just installed this operating system. But if I then go to the next workspace, and you can do this by pressing Control, Alt, and then the right arrow key, and then I can simply launch the calendar, for example. So here we go, here's the calendar, and then I can just move it here, and then Control, Alt, left click, and I can simply just cycle through all these different workstations. I know it's a little bit laggy, but this is running on 4 gigabytes of RAM, so what do you expect? But anyway, as you can see here, instead of using hotkeys, you can just click at the top when pressing the Win key. Whenever you add programs to a workstation, it will actually duplicate it and just give you an entire blank workstation. So now I have 4 now. So try not to include too many, because if you have 4 gigabytes of RAM like I do, then it might crash your system or just be really slow. So try to avoid that. So one of the first applications I'm going to show you is obviously Firefox. Most Linux distributions that actually come pre-installed with Firefox have a direct bookmark to the project page. So let me show you now. That obviously it wants me to make it my default browser. But if I go to Fedora project right here and click on Get Fedora, it will take me to the direct address of the Fedora project, and here you can see the many different versions of what Fedora has to offer. So we have the workstation, which is what I'm using at the moment. There's server, where you can actually install Fedora to manage your server if you're in an industry. And then there's the Internet of Things. So remember last time in my Linux video, I said that an Internet of Things device can run Linux versions that have been specifically tailored towards them. But now you can install Fedora on them as well. I'm sure it'll be a more simple operating system because you probably won't actually have to interact with it. The Internet of the device does it itself. So yeah, these are the different versions of Fedora, and they're all directed towards different hardware, which is pretty cool. Before I move on, I just want to show you Red Hat. And I did mention this before, but if we go on to the Red Hat website, you can see that it is subscription based, but you can learn for free. I think if you're using Red Hat on its own, it might be free for you, but if you're in a company, then you have to pay. But that's just Red Hat. I'm not really familiar with it, but if anyone can let me know how it works and if you can get it for free, please drop something in the comments. Okay, so now we're going to close Firefox, and we're going to move on through the system tray. This is Rhythmbox. This is your kind of a Groove music equivalent if you're using Windows 10. So here you can export and also play your music. Obviously I don't have any music installed, but that is Rhythmbox. We've had a look at photos, and this is your GUI for the system files. So if you're not using a terminal, this is where you can just navigate through your folders. Obviously, as I mentioned before, I don't really have anything here. Documents, downloads, music, pictures, videos, and there's your recycle bin. And yeah, as you can see here, I only have around 2 gigs of storage. That's probably why it's running so poorly, but there you go. Okay, now we're going to extend the system tray and look at the rest of the apps. So this is the contacts. This is where you can create a new local address book, and then you can simply just write down contact information. Is pretty much just a phone book, really. Next is the weather app. So this is where you can input your location, and it will just provide the real-time respective weather temperature for you. So let's just type in, I don't know, let's just type in America or Las Americas. There we go. Perfect. And it will just give you the weather forecast and the current temperature. There's also a calendar for all the different days and not just the hourly data. Moving on, we have the Gnome Clocks. I did notice earlier that they were called just clocks, but the real name is just the Gnome Clocks because it uses the extensive Gnome software in order to function. So let's just type in London, United Kingdom. There we go. And it gives you the clocks. There's also the alarms. You can set alarms if you wish. Stopwatch, and finally a timer. This is maps if you like GPS data, but I tried this earlier and it never really loaded. So moving on to videos, this is your sort of films and TV equivalent. Obviously nothing's there because I don't have any videos, but if you use Fedora and you download videos and record videos with the built-in camera, then it should appear there. This is the calculator. You have many different modes. You have the programming mode, advanced mode, financial mode, and keyboard mode. I'm sure it also reads what you type in on the numpad as well. So let's do 4 plus 4, and there we go. So that's your calculator. This is your basic text editor, and it will save the string of text in a .txt file, just like you would normally have on Notepad. So here is some text, and then if I just save and go into documents, for example, just call it here is some text, then It is saved now as a .txt. This is the disk management software. Obviously, it's detected my drives on my host machine, but it's not actually providing anything towards Linux. This is where you can partition drives and allocate storage for different applications. So yeah, that's the disk management. I'm not sure what else you can do here, but yeah, that's in essence, that's what it is. This is the document scanner. I think this is used for printing. So you just scan your document and then connect to a printer, and then it will print it off. So yeah, you can have all pages from a feeder, multiple pages from Flatbed as well. So that's if you want to print off stuff. Here is your disk usage analyzer. So this is where you can find out what applications are basically occupying most of the storage on your computer. And I think you can remove it from here as well. And obviously you can do this for every single drive you have. For some reason it wants me to authenticate, probably because I haven't created an account for this. But yeah, this is how you remove files which are using a lot of disk space. This is your settings. I'm surprised it hasn't been added to the system tray by default, but this is your basic settings. You have the network, your Bluetooth. I don't have a Bluetooth adapter, so that's why it's not showing for me. It might be different for you though. It's your background, so you can change your background if you want to. I'm going to leave it where it is at the moment. You can toggle notifications on and off. You can search for any application. And you can even just simply configure settings within apps of your choice. Next we have privacy, so you can turn your privacy settings on and off, like such as location, camera, microphone, Thunderbolt as well, and file history, and screen lock as well. So maybe if you leave your desktop, then it will automatically lock after 5 minutes. You can connect to different accounts using the online accounts function. You can also share. Obviously, this is your audio settings. For some reason, it doesn't work for me. Probably because I haven't enabled audio output through VirtualBox, but it should be different for you. Here are your display settings. I'm obviously using a 1080p 16:9 ratio. And also you can choose a portrait or landscape orientation. Here is your mouse and touchpad settings. Here is also your keyboard settings. External devices such as printers, removable media, and your color settings. Here is your regional language settings. It is United States English by default, but you can change it obviously. Your accessibility settings, and finally your user settings. Here we have the system monitor. This is the equivalent to the task manager in Windows, so you can see all your current and background processes and how it's using your resources. Here's your document viewer. I'm not actually too sure as to what that does, but moving on, we have boxes. Now, boxes is Fedora's pre-installed virtualization software, so you can run virtual machines in Fedora if you wish. I guess that's great for the workplace because you probably need to use that for pen testing. So you could technically have Debian Kali Linux through boxes, which is through Fedora. So I'm not going to actually try this out because I'm already using virtualization software on very little hardware allocation. So if I probably try to simulate another operating system within an operating system, I think it will just break entirely. But yeah. Here we have the image viewer. I guess that's just to maybe modify and view images in more detail. Characters, well, it speaks for itself really. You can include an assortment of emojis. I don't think you can actually put them on your desktop, rather annoyingly. But yes, and also when you click on them, it gives you a Unicode identification. So you can copy the character if you wish and then maybe put it through a text editor, and also messages. Help will lead you to an external website where you can see the various categories on what issues you may be having. Moving on, we have the screenshot. So here you can simply just take a screenshot. You can do the whole screen or maybe just a window or a selection if you want. And a pointer, I guess, is just your cursor if you want that to be in the shot as well. Cheese is the camera. I don't actually have a camera thread through here, so you don't see my face, but let's move on. Fonts gives you an array of different font styles and boldness. I think it includes also, some other languages as well. So definitely it gives you the option to install. Some are already pre-installed, but if I just scroll back up here, you can even choose to uninstall some. But yeah, obviously it would use up quite a lot of room if you had everything installed here. So it's optional. You can choose to have some installed, or you can uninstall some of the pre-installed ones. These three applications on the bottom right here is the Office 365 equivalent, as I mentioned earlier. So LibreOffice Calculator, or Calc, I think, is the Edexcel equivalent. So you can see all the cells appear now. Here we are. And then you can just simply minimize them. I'm just going to put it here for now. And then there's the LibreOffice Impress. This is the PowerPoint equivalent. As you can see, like in Microsoft PowerPoint, it will give you some default designs you can choose from. So I'm just going to move that to the right. And finally, we have Writer, which you probably guessed by now is the Word equivalent. And then you can just simply type some stuff. And the best part about all of this is that it's entirely free. It comes pre-installed with Fedora. So moving on to the second tab over here, you have your logs, which basically includes all of the error information that has come through. Obviously, it encounters errors pretty much all the time, but none of them are software breaking. So if you're looking for a specific error that you've been experiencing, you can probably find it here, and then you'll be able to troubleshoot them. And it does tell you what time that it occurred, just for greater reference. Your trouble reporting, I think, is a troubleshooting software. I'm not exactly sure. Obviously, I haven't really encountered any problems, but please let me know if you know more about this than I do. Your software is the kind of Microsoft Store equivalent. So here you can get an assortment of administrating tools or games if you wish. Just let it load. So now this is loaded, we can go browse software, and here are all the categories of different applications you would like to install. If you go on communication and news, for example, and wait for this to load, it will show all the related applications that you can install. And finally, we have Tor. So basically, this kind of speaks for itself, but this will give you an overview of Fedora 34 and what you expect and what you can do as well. So take the time just to look through this. And also, Fedora 34 supports touchpad. I don't have a touchpad with me, but if you have one at home, then yeah, you can try it. So lastly, I'm going to take you through the terminal. If we type in pwd, this will list the current directory that we're in. If we type in ls, then this will list all the files and folders. As you can see, the text file that I made earlier, I saved here in the live user directory. So if we type in, I don't want it anymore. So if I type in remove rm, here is, now the operating system will automatically guess what I'm trying to say. So if I just press tab, then they will autocomplete for me. When I press enter, and then ls again, as you can see, it's not there anymore. So in order to jump into a folder, then we type in cd, and then let's do downloads, for example. So I type in downloads, or just down, and then press tab, it will autocomplete for me. I press enter again, and pwd, as you can see, we are now in the downloads folder. If I ls, obviously nothing's in there yet, because this is new. And if we want to jump back out of downloads, you go cd space ... and enter. pwd again, just so we're in the right place, and ls, and we are simply back. So that's the basic navigation of the shell in Bash. So I want to show you a pretty awesome tool that you can do it in the terminal, such as this. So if we type in clear, this won't disrupt our previous operation that we've just been doing, our previous session. If we just press clear and then enter, and then this will basically just clear our screen, but it won't remove anything. If we type in sudo dnf install screen fetch, this will basically install an external application which you can do right here in the terminal called screen fetch. It will basically just list your system information as well as display your respective Linux distro logo in ASCII, which is pretty cool. So after it's finished installing, it will come up with a prompt if we want to proceed with the install. Type yes. And now it's complete. So if we just clear the screen now, because we've done all of this stuff on our screen, and then type in screen fetch, just screen fetch, then it will give us, finish loading, here we go. It will give us all the system information on the right and the Fedora logo on the left. So as you can see for my CPU, I am using my host machine CPU, which is the AMD Ryzen 7. And I'm also using around 4 gigabytes of RAM, which isn't very much. And obviously on the shell up here, so the terminal that we're currently running, it's using Bash 5.1.0. And up here, it basically lists the user, the current distro we're running, and what version of the Linux kernel we're using. Finally, it also displays the display manager, which is, as I mentioned before, GNOME 40. So now we come to the end of the overview. I hope you found this video interesting and informative. I will carry on with the Linux series while also doing Cybersecurity Explained. I'll probably move on to covering Debian or Kali Linux, which is based off Debian. But if there's a specific distro you would like me to cover, then please let me know in the comments. Thank you once again for watching, and goodbye.